Oh, but Christopher Walken is the puss of Puss in Boots.
Oh, okay.
Apparently.
It's him.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Christopher Walken is the puss.
Welcome to the Rewatchers on the Pod, the podcast where we watch stuff and then talk about it. 1 in a million, this podcast, folks. You're here with me, Tyler Harris.
Tyler McKinley.
Justin Hammer.
And our special guest this week, Brandon Bills. Hey, Brandon.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And this week we did watch The World's End. Brandon was kind enough to bring this movie to our attention, and we watched it. And Brandon, why did you choose The World's End?
So I feel oftentimes when talking about Edgar Wright's catalog, or even like specifically the Cornetto trilogy, this one kind of gets swept under the rug. Feel like it's super underrated, but I think those who know it know how fucking awesome it is. Mm-hmm. It's just with each time you watch it, you get something new, and I also love watching people watch this for the first time.
Yeah,
because it's a real wild ride.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that because I think there were some people that watched this that had no idea, like not even a reference point for like this is an Edgar Wright thing. Like it was just, here you go, welcome to the deep end.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll talk about that. But before we get to that, Tyler was kind enough to jot down a recap for any folks who haven't seen this movie yet, but who just want to know every detail that happens. So, yeah, go ahead, Tyler. Let's hit us with them deets.
All right. The World's End.
Chapter 1.
By Edgar Wright. Off to a good start. Remix of that Moonrise Kingdom song plays. Simon Pegg is King, Gary King. Golden Mile exposition. Pierce Brosnan is in this film. Gary is at a Sunday school in the gym, probably because the chapel is full. He is not ashamed at all for not making The World's End. In the UK, party guys dress like school shooters in the USA. Peter sells cars and has sex twice. Also works for his dad, selling cars. Don't do this again. One guy didn't get the name of manages construction. Martin Freeman works real estate. Andy works in business and is not having Gary's shit. Gary tells his mom, I hate you. Gary tells him his mom died. Gary's necklace hints that he uses DMT. That one guy's name is Steven. Gary has no sense of time. Hot Pie's dad is the bartender at the first tavern. Andy will only drink water. Gary and King Arthur are pissed. Sam and Martin Freeman's sister is causing some strife.
Wow. Good God.
Gary wants sexy toilet time, but he is out of order. That statue is coming into play later. Argus Frey / Walder Filch is still kicking. Gary is barred from the pub, but that won't stop him from having a pint. Peter isn't recognized by his childhood bully. Everyone wants the end of the night. Gary goes to the bathroom when his mom calls. Gary breaks urinal code and pays with his blood. He fights a human NASA toilet and kicks its head off. It's man on boy action in the bathroom.
Good God.
This scene has more dismemberment than an EA Star Wars video game. And he does all the shots. The towns have been invaded by robots and enslave the townsfolk. Trevor Weedman says too much. The next bartender is under the influence of robots. Sam is confronted by the twins. Gary once fucked them, but now fucks them up. Steven confesses his love for Sam before a dame that is all legs wants to swing. Steven rips... Steven rips her head off. Basil Filch gives Steven robot deets. Marmalade sandwich robots seduce Gary, Peter, and Andy. Oliver might be a robot. Pierce Brosnan is in this film. Him and Martin Freeman are robots. Barstool boxing gloves. Andy watches WWE. Gary hears some hard truths from Sam after trying to Jackie Chan it off a roof. Sam drives away. Everyone needs to prove who they are, so we see bums, shins, fingers, and headbangs. Peter faces his bully in the woods and is converted to the Lord. Gary needs 2 more pubs. He abandons the group and Andy chases him. Steven sacrifices himself and the car. Andy fists another woman to get his wedding ring back. Gary and Andy have a duel at the world's end. Gary tried to commit suicide once. He pulls the tap for his last pint and is taken to the robot pit where the robot plan is revealed. They try to bribe Gary, but he rips his own head off and drop kicks it. Steven drops in. They argue with the robot overlord, who decides it's not worth it to argue with them. The robots explode and abandon their plan. Sam drives in and picks them up. Newton has become a fireball. The network going down throws the world into a post-apocalyptic internetless world. This movie is a prequel to Death Stranding. Gary leads the robot versions of his young gang across the wasteland demanding water from unfriendly establishments. Credits.
Wow. I don't have any questions.
You pretty much nailed it.
Oh my god. Yeah, that was basically everything that happened in this movie. Pretty straightforward. Return to Old Town to drink a bunch of beer, and then turns out there's robots. Blah blah blah.
I just want to say Mitchell's gonna listen to this and just like cringe, and he's gonna hate me.
Oh man. Well, I do want to get, before we start talking about it too much, because this movie is like unofficially / officially part of a trilogy of movies that you don't need to see all of, but you could. I do just want to kind of gauge like where everyone is at. So Tyler, you've seen all of them now, right?
I've seen all of them.
Okay. And Brandon, you've seen all of them?
Yeah, multiple times.
I've seen all of them. Justin, had you seen any of the other movies, either Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz?
I've seen Hot Fuzz. I have yet to watch Shaun of the Dead.
Okay.
So that's
Cool.
that's been on my list for a long time.
Okay,
I haven't
yeah.
got to it yet.
Great movie. Should definitely watch it. But okay, cool. That was, everyone is basically on the same page then. I thought that we'd have a little bit more of a break there. But cool. Well, yeah, let's talk about this movie. I think the first thing that comes up when I think about this movie is its connection to those other movies. Because kind of like you were saying, I think when I first saw this, I felt a little underwhelmed because I loved those other movies so much. But this movie has so many of the same jokes and references. There's kind of these threads that run through all of them. And so there was at least that for me. And I loved that. Like, I love Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. This seems to be like a character dynamic. Like, this is a character dynamic that we haven't seen between them, where Simon Pegg plays this
He's just an ass.
Yeah, exactly. He's just this asshole, and Nick Frost plays more of a straight man to that.
He's
which
got
is
his
really great.
shit together more than Simon Pegg's character.
Yeah.
Which is like the reverse of Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
But have you seen did you ever see the trailer for this movie?
I mean, I'm sure years ago.
So I think I saw it in theaters and I completely forgot about it. But like, having watched it for the first time when I finally did, I realized that the trailer completely fucking like spoiled it. Like the huge
That's what
twist.
I was thinking. Yeah, because doesn't the trailer like show them in like the robot pit at the end of the movie?
Yeah, and it shows all the like lights coming out of everyone's
Right,
eyes and
yeah.
mouths, and and that's such a huge twist. Like this movie completely from dusk till dawn's you. Where
Oh, yeah, for sure,
it's
yeah.
a completely different movie the first half, and then one event happens that completely changes everything. And I think knowing that going into it can hurt it.
Yeah, I can see that.
But I also don't know because once I did see this, I had already seen Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and I probably didn't like really fall in love with it until maybe my third time watching it. But I don't know how it stands without the context of those two films.
Yeah.
Like if you're not in on it, it probably isn't like as good if you have seen those movies.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because I was thinking about it this time. I don't know how many. I've seen this movie quite a few times now, just because this is like these movies are like some of my comfort foods of just like, I'll just throw this on while I'm fucking around the kitchen or whatever, you know? But it really does like, we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, but the idea that Shaun of the Dead, like, pays homage to all these horror tropes. It's really easy to latch on because of that. Hot Fuzz also calls on all these super well-known, it's a buddy cop movie, but also does it better than most buddy cop movies. Right. And then this movie has like these sci-fi trappings, and there are those tropes in there, but they're not front and center like they are in Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah, there's like hints of like Stepford Wives and like even hints of like the town from Hot Fuzz, like the whole conspiracy thing going on, and then also like the apocalyptic element of Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah,
and so like it's not clearly making an homage to anything like those first two movies are, but it's its own weird little entry, and like I just fucking love it.
Yeah. Well, and like because it does. We were kind of talking about that as the idea that like this movie kind of just references itself throughout it, and like it has this like snowball effect of like I feel like by like probably an hour into this movie, everything starts to get funnier because so many of those jokes and so many of are so quick that it takes you a while to like learn the language of it. And then once you're in on the joke, it feels funnier. But yeah, it's such an interesting thing in that regard, I think. But yeah, I don't know. This was your first time seeing it though, Tyler, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen the other two. This is my first time seeing The World's End.
Yeah. What are your initial impressions, I guess, like that way?
Well, it's hard. I mean, it's definitely always hard when you watch a movie for the first time and you're taking notes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because the only person's name I saw pop up on the screen in the first act was Andy's. Does it do that for everyone?
I think it did, yeah.
I know it does for Peter
and Oliver.
I missed every single one of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's hard to judge that way. On my first like initial response, it's probably my least favorite out of the three.
Fair.
But I still enjoyed it. Part of it was those like continued tropes from the original, like the first two. The first two.
Yeah.
I do love the combat in these movies.
Oh, good.
And I really actually, this one might be my favorite just because of how out of place it feels. Because every other one feels like at least it has like some bearing on the story at hand, whereas this is like out of nowhere, this fight in the bathroom just starts happening, and then it just gets... Everyone knows how to fight really fucking well.
Except for Peter, who just crawls on the ground.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, like the way every character fights according to their character.
Yeah.
It's like very specific. Like Andy is just the brute pro wrestler and just dominates every fight he's in.
The move that always blows my mind is Steven lifting that robot into the air and then that robot transitioning that into like a takedown on him, where it's like this weird like waterfall of bodies that ends up with him pinned on the ground.
It's like
so
like a
weird.
head scissor, like a luchador move.
Yeah,
it's insane. But I love when Andy holds the headless robot over his head and breaks his back like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises.
I do appreciate the over the top crazy action that's like really funny. And they squeeze in jokes in there, like someone's in here, like in the bathroom was incredible.
Yeah, when he crashes through the door on the
But then
phone.
it's also like underneath you're secretly kind of like, this is kind of badass. Like, just that flavor of it is really fun.
Yeah.
This is a strange movie because I feel almost as if it's I don't know. there's certain bands you listen to that when they start releasing album after album, they start just releasing comfort albums. This kind of feels almost like an Edgar Wright comfort movie, where it's like him just jamming in the studio.
Absolutely, holy shit! Yeah.
And that's how I kind of feel about it. Like I definitely like it. It's just like there's like I don't know his like this like you've said multiple times. The script for Hot Fuzz is just so strong.
Yeah.
And this one, like, he doesn't really go through much of an arc at all. It's just kind of, like at the end, it's like, oh, this asshole he's always been actually ends up what saves everything.
Yeah, and man, like I love the lines that when they say Gary is never wrong. And it turns out to be true because all of him predicting that it's not just the robot in the bathroom that's there; it's the whole town. And yeah, he's right.
Well, yeah, and I think it's interesting too, like the idea that this character who his flaw is that he's like never let go of the past,
right?
And that's literally the thing that makes him thrive in the post-apocalypse. Is he's like, I don't give a fuck about this shit. Like this is way better now, and like. I mean, just like in the way that that's subtly brought, like even his phone, like you're like, this is not a man. He doesn't even have a phone that's connected to this network that is so great. You know what I mean? Like all this weird stuff.
He knows this advancement in technology. No,
nope.
But yeah, and the idea that the heroes of this movie at the point where they save the world are just fucking hammered, are so like drunk, is such a great subversion of even that. And like I think if you do look at it in the context of like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, like you do have the arc in Shaun of the Dead of this slacker who like comes to terms with the idea that he needs to change some things in his life and you know mend fences and get the relations back that he's had. And then in Hot Fuzz you have kind of that opposite movement of like this really uptight guy learning to let go a little bit and let other people help him. And in this it's almost just this fucking nihilistic, just like who gives a shit, just like have a good time. Like it's such a cool, I don't know, like in that context, it's something too that I think this movie for me, I think I like so much because of the context that it falls into and its differences to those other two movies. And it's really fun. I think like in talking about this kind of being like this jam album of a movie, it really does feel like this is Edgar Wright, like, maybe at the height of his filmmaking craft at this point, in some of those regards. Like, the jokes in this movie are so fast and like don't draw a lot of attention to themselves a lot of the time. Like, that joke about WTF in the bath, like there's so many of those just like dialogue jokes that are so quick and they just move on. They just drop them constantly. And it's on to the next thing. That's so impressive. And the action, like the sequences through here are so long and they all flow so well, which obviously, you know, like Baby Driver that he's done since then does that same thing in a much more elegant way, I would say. But this is, it's so bombastic and crazy and just, it's so fucking incredible.
I love the particular fight scene where all Gary is trying to do is drink his pint of beer and he just keeps getting interrupted. And it's almost like a fucking old like Jackie Chan movie where his main objective in this fight is not the fight itself. It's just downing this pint of beer. And he just keeps getting interrupted, and like you're like, okay, he's almost finished with the glass, but then he just keeps fucking getting knocked over. And like you want to see him finish the beer, but there's all this crazy shit going on around, and I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that. I just fucking like this movie.
It's kind of like the whole movie right there. Right? Just finish your beer. All the crazy shit's happening.
I will say, I mean, first of all, like the cast is incredible. It really is kind of like a who's who of like British comedy at that time, like British film comedy and stuff. I do want to talk about probably my favorite character in this movie, which is Basil. David Bradley. Which
David Bradley is so great.
Oh my
just
gosh,
everything.
It's crazy because like he does not. He can play Walder Frey in fucking Game of Thrones and Argus Filch and Harry Potter, which like are kind of similar characters.
Yeah.
He was the revival of the First Doctor in Doctor Who.
Yes, yeah, which is like
What the fuck?
weird. And like but then like I look at his stuff like in Hot Fuzz, he's also one of my favorite characters, which is just that it gives birth to like that idea of like 3 layers of translation to like communicate ideas. And in this, he's just a delightfully insane person.
Crazy straws ain't so crazy anymore.
Just man, just his physicality. He just nails every second on like that weird run he has at the end when he's just telling everyone to run away. Like, God damn it.
Yeah, when they're finding out who's human, and he just pokes out his head, and he's like, "I'm still human. I don't know for how long." He's like, "Basil." He's like, "Shh." Oh, and he's still like freaking out. It's
When
so
he's
good.
explaining and he's just like, "I'll tell you what's going on." Yes, this cop.
Just everything about it.
God.
Like, he's so great. And that's like one of those things that I feel like, for the ways that this movie feels maybe different than Hot Fuzz, or I think I do agree with you where Hot Fuzz feels like everything in Hot Fuzz. I don't think anything ever feels as bombastic as this movie, because everything in Hot Fuzz feels incredibly scripted in a perfect way, in a way that I absolutely love. And this does, like, because of that like bombastic nature of it, I feel like it is a movie that requires multiple viewings to kind of get everything that's going on. Because there is so much foreshadowing in this movie. It's almost like everything is foreshadowing the next scene, and then scenes much later are recalling to the first scene. Even the shots of like in the opening montage, you see when Gary pushes Steven down to go after Sam,
right? Which
is exactly what happens later when Sam shows up. Mm-hmm. Just like incredible stuff like that, and all the dialogue there's so many recycled lines that are used multiple times. It's pointless arguing with you or whatever. I can't remember exactly what he says, but
it's just callback after callback, and I feel because of that, and I think this one leans into that so much more than the other two entries, that I think this one just has a lot more layers, because having rewatched Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, I feel like those movies are pretty much just as good, like, the third time as they were the first time.
Yeah, for sure.
But for me, this movie, it seriously gets better with each viewing. Well, you'll just catch something just a little bit different, and, like, Edgar Wright's attention to detail is borderline autistic. it's insane.
Yeah, it really is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, even just like them walking past the same people in the same order that happens. I love when they go into the pub and the guy and the bartender does recreate like the first conversation that they have when they go in and aren't recognized, and he's like, "Oh, Gary, the prodigal sons have returned." Like, he's using all those same lines. Mm-hmm. It's so
it definitely demands delightful. You to pay attention more so, I feel like, than the previous two films. To actually get what mostly just the humor, to be honest. You have to really be watching this movie to laugh. And something unrelated, but something I really appreciate about this whole trilogy is in each film, no one really gets sucked too much into typecasting. Simon Pegg plays a very different character in each of these films.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, for the most part in his career, that holds true. There is one character that he plays multiple times, which is the Mission Impossible character.
Right, it's literally just the same character.
Yeah, and he's in other movies as that character, but for the most part, I feel like he does great. But this one, especially, wide polar opposites and really fun to see. I think that's my favorite part about seeing all these three movies now, is just seeing the difference in his performances.
Yeah.
It's really great.
This one is probably my favorite performance of his career. He goes all in, and like the depth he brings this character is just insane to me, because at first you're just like, oh, he's this asshole who's kind of funny and likable, but like he's so much deeper in that. And then like the last shot that mirrors like him when he was a teenager looking at the sunset, and he's just watching the world end and him realizing it's his fault. Just the look in Simon Pegg's eyes when he says that he's sorry. Like, no one can do sad like Simon Pegg does.
Yeah. Yeah, there are so many times in this he does those subtle shifts, and he can do them like immediately, like at the drop of a hat, but he can also like stretch those moments over, you know, long periods of time on these slow like dollies in, and yeah, he really is great. And he also wrote this with Edgar Wright. I'm pretty sure that this is...
I think that's right, yeah.
Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg. I actually do want to look up and see. I can't remember if he wrote Hot Fuzz with Edgar Wright either. But yeah, I think that there's so much about this movie too. I think of the Edgar Wright movies, this maybe feels the most English, is in the idea that there is enough, especially in the first half, of stuff that's said that I'm like, this could be like a very specific joke that I would not understand at all. You know what I mean? And that's also fun to just to see that. But yeah, so I'm just pulling this up now. But I think that because this movie has such a much less traditional structure than Hot Fuzz or Shaun of the Dead, it definitely is like a hard one to break into. Like I wish that we could get. Has Gwen seen any? I know. Yeah, Justin's wife watched this with us.
She's seen Hot Fuzz.
Okay,
I watched Hot Fuzz once, and I said you need to watch this with me, and so we watched that together.
Yeah.
And I mean, other than that, other Edgar Wright. I mean, we like Scott Pilgrim.
Maybe?
I've watched that like I don't know how many times I've seen
Yeah.
Scott Pilgrim. We saw Ant-Man, but yeah,
That doesn't, you can see
I don't think that
where
really
Edgar
counts.
Wright-
Yeah, I dreamt of seeing Edgar Wright's Ant-Man once. Yeah. Okay.
No,
cool.
but structurally it's pretty weird because you've got, if you're going for just from strictly a character standpoint, everyone else's second act starts before his.
Yeah, for
before
sure.
Gary's.
Right.
All of his friends' first acts are very short. Their call to action is essentially
Gary showing up.
them going, and then they're into their second act. Whereas Gary's doesn't really start until he fights a kid in the bathroom and knocks his head off.
Yeah.
And that's just a really interesting thing. And then it just turns into a crazy romp of violence and alcohol and manipulation. And
Yeah. God.
Sounds like a Friday to me.
I mean, those Brits, man. But that was the strange thing, and where it ends up going was kind of unexpected to me because I knew. Oh, I had seen the trailer once again, like way before, like when it was coming out, and I totally forgot about. I knew the premise that it was like end of the world type of stuff. Mm-hmm. I couldn't remember like what it was though, so I was expecting something a lot more along the lines of "This is the end." And,
yeah.
Then it was just the robots for like the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so that was unexpected. And then I feel like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, I mean, there's some darkness to their endings, but they kind of are more hopeful and like are technically more like happy endings, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas this one feels like they just didn't give a fuck. And is like, I don't know, that's why it feels so much like just like a jam album to me. It's just, he's like, let's just do all this crazy shit. And like, it fits the tone of the movie very well. It continues that all the way through and follows through. And then in true trilogy fashion, it, comes back at the end with this world that's kind of changed, but is people have still found their place in it, even though it's really fucked up. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think that's kind of the big thread for me. I mean, there's definitely like the humor and the style, but that's definitely another part of the connection between the three. but this one does it more on its own playing field than the other two do.
Yeah, for sure. That's just one of those things I can't get away from with this movie. Is I just keep thinking it's this like love letter to just doing what you want any old time.
And I wish I would have seen this almost like without seeing the other two, to just be able to, because I feel like the shadow of the other two are just hanging over it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to separate them.
Yeah.
And it makes it worse that it's like the same people involved in all.
Right. Exactly.
But it's I would really I think I would have like, I mean I enjoyed it this time, but I think I would have just loved it if I first saw it like at the beginning of college without any knowledge of it beforehand.
Yeah.
And not knowing like the twists or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because part of me thought the drama part of it was going to play out a little bit longer, and so just to have that twist so violently.
You mean like the opening? You thought the opening part was going to be like just basically them drinking and arguing?
Yeah, and I thought it was going to more ease into things as opposed to just being like, here's a solid line, we crossed it, let's go. Which I ended up loving.
Yeah.
I had actually kind of forgotten that was where we were going. Like I'd known about that, but honestly, it wasn't on my mind. I was like, I remember when we first started tonight, I was like, what is it about this that we're going to be talking about? And then like, of course, the major shift happens, and I was like, oh yeah, we're watching an Edgar Wright film. Like this is what we're in store for tonight. But honestly, like my perspective, having only watched Hot Fuzz twice, I think is the total time, like that hasn't, I didn't feel like that really like overshadowed this for me. It was more like I loved Hot Fuzz so much, and this was like, oh yeah, we're doing this. Like, I love this kind of movie. Like this feels like a movie I would make if I was smarter. But like this is a movie made for me. So
for sure. There's a great I'm sure you guys have watched Every Frame of Painting on YouTube. I know.
Yeah.
There's a great Edgar Wright episode where he talks about
his editing.
Shots
editing and also the way that Edgar Wright does comedy, which like, you know, he talks about how Edgar Wright turns the idea of the character in, I can't remember his name in Hot Fuzz, but moving to the country, and how he tells that story just with all these visual cues. And that's one of the things that I feel like with this movie, and kind of going back to the idea of like, you do have to pay, like this movie needs you to pay attention to it to pick out all those things. Like there's so much crammed into every shot. Not that makes it look busy or bad, but there's just so many like little Easter eggs and details that really make this movie shine. I feel like
the names of each bar always get me because I think it's the first post and like the following one being completely identical. Like the foreshadowing there being that like, you know, the whole town's been assimilated. Yeah. And like with like the famous cock, that's the one where Gary, he comes back and he's been banned. And like the hole in the wall being the one where they're being chased by robots and they like just, that's their escape. Like every single one, it blows my mind rewatching it each time and like noticing that type of shit.
Yeah. Well, and even like The Mermaid, like we talked about that a little bit last week because of the lighthouse and stuff, but like the idea that is where they go, and they like these sirens are there. They, you know what I mean? Like it's all so good. I mean, character wise, were there any other characters like that stood out to you? I love Peter.
He's great.
I think he's such a great character, and I think that his journey is really satisfying. Even though you really don't want him to, you know, meet the end that he does, it's kind of rad that you got to kick the shit out of his, you know, he like at least exorcised his demons before he was taken over by this collective or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that I mean, I think all the main characters like are really interestingly fleshed out and are really fun. I love the idea of Sam being this Deus Ex Machina who basically she is that because she doesn't know how to exit a roundabout correctly, which is like set up very early on in the movie, like getting lost on the ring road, which also did they call is the ring road a term?
It must be. I don't know.
I have zero experience with British slang.
Something that also like kind of astonishes me is that this movie is so damn charming and funny, but it's also like dealing with some pretty heavy shit, like with Gary's mental health and like alcoholism and how that affects the people around him, but it can still manage to like get a laugh. And there's a lot of scenes where I find them simultaneously funny and sad. Like when they go to the bar that he's banned from and he still wants to drink a pint and he sees those 3 half-filled glasses and without them knowing, he just downs them anyway.
Yeah, that's it. That actually is a great character moment because it is not for anyone else. It's not like if you really were going to do the 12-pint challenge, you'd have to drink these too. He has to do like it is. That really does show like this how internalized that and important that is to him, which is fucking weird and a bummer, kind of.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, it was a huge bummer.
I found it interesting that Peter's character doesn't get turned into one of the robots until he gives in to the desire to get revenge on his childhood bully, which is like, as an outsider viewing that, like you cheer for him to get the revenge that he wants because it has obviously affected him so badly. Yeah. But then he gets what he wants and there's negative consequences that occur because of that, which is kind of like a gut punch from an audience's perspective. It's like, this is something that we want him to be able to do to get that revenge, but then
the man gets you.
Yeah.
You get Starbucks.
I mean, and then the story at the end of the movie, like they're telling the like it's a recap of, or what's the guy's name? The big guy.
Andy,
yeah. So they're sitting around the fire and Andy's telling what happened, and he's sitting in front of like the train cars or whatever, and it says like, to err is human, and then there's to forgive divine.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Come on, Peter.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, it's so funny. That is another one of those like tropes. The ending with telling the story of a bygone civilization to children who have grown up knowing no internet. Like it's like that's the ending to Road Warrior. Like there's a shitty scene in Reign of Fire, I'm pretty sure, that I don't really remember much else other than them reenacting old movies or something. Which, Reign of Fire, there's a movie I need to
literally
revisit.
remember only bald Matthew McConaughey jumping off of a tower with a battle axe and not even hitting the fucking dragon.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about. It sounds
Bale.
amazing.
Oh, there was a movie with Christian
Hold on,
Bale.
let me light the fire.
With Christian Bale and Matthew McConaughey. In the exposition-filled beginning of the movie, it is told that dragons have gone dormant, like underground. Is that right?
Sure, I don't remember.
They awaken them, and it's like modern day. It turns into a post-apocalyptic dragon movie
in London, right? Aren't they in
think
London
so.
or something? Yeah.
And Matthew McConaughey has a shaved head, is wearing a sleeveless vest, like military jacket, and he's the American badass.
Oh my god!
And
when was this made?
2000.
Oh man,
5, 4.
Yeah, that
my
sounds
God.
right. Look it up.
Holy shit! That's literally all I remember though. Where the plot goes from there, don't remember.
I mean, Reign of Fire was released during the era when they were still doing like movie video game adaptations, because I know that there's a Reign of Fire video game that would always trick me when I went to the video game store. I was like, that looks like a cool dragon. Reign of Fire. Fuck off. I can play a Reign of Fire video game.
I mean, it was old enough that I didn't know who Christian Bale was.
2002, even earlier.
And that was my first Matthew McConaughey movie as well. So I had a completely wrong idea.
So
about
it's been
that
all
guy's
downhill for you since then, really.
It is. How
Fun-
did I
fun
connect to
fact.
this movie? Oh, go ahead.
Somebody told me I looked like bald Matthew McConaughey from that movie.
Rain of
You got the beard. Yeah, like, yeah.
Our podcast has some fucking stars on it.
We just need to get you a sleeveless vest and a battle axe.
Okay.
We'll get you the Mandy axe. How's that
Oh
sound?
my
Hell yeah.
God, Mandy. Holy shit.
How did Rain of Fire connect to this movie again?
Oh, we were just talking about movies with scenes of weird post-apocalyptic storytelling
Oh,
around
yes,
the
yes,
campfire.
yes. Which that moment in this movie was my like, wait, what the fuck?
I love it. It is such a weird, like, because it does the thing, it stays just like this normal movie for so long, and then it has that moment in the bathroom where they're fighting robots, and then it's just robots for a long time, and then it's like, oh, we're gonna confront the robots and quote unquote win, which is basically just the robots being like, you know, fuck it. Literally the robots saying fuck it and leaving. And then it just devolves, it just doubles down on that in the best way possible.
and two characters that I thought were going to come back are just dead, and they've been, but they get replaced.
Yeah.
I really liked Oliver's fate with him still doing real estate, but he's just got half a soccer ball on
He's basically what I'm sure people who write fan fiction imagined a full-bodied Wilson to be from Castaway.
Yeah.
Played by head's a soccer ball with eyes drawn on it.
Played by Martin Freeman.
I mean, he's doing
Yes.
his fate seems much like it would be for what a real estate agent does in Detroit.
There's no copper wiring, but the doors are still here, so one step ahead of your neighbors.
Man.
Yeah, that what a great thing. And the idea that the apocalypse somewhat salvaged Andy Knightley's marriage.
Yeah. She might have known, but she didn't care.
Yeah. Oh, what a great thing. But yeah, even just that last moment, like the scene that this movie ends on, that scene in itself does a whole movie's worth of world building also, where it's like, you know exactly what's happening. Like that feels like a scene where it is borrowing just full on, like, from those tropes. One of my favorite things is him walking into the bar with the blanks or whatever, and there's just two guys who look exactly like each other. One has HU carved into his forehead, and the other one has man carved into his forehead. It's like, if that guy is separated from his brother, I guess it's fine, but like the other guy's just like, who? What? Like, what is happening with your forehead etching?
Yeah, it's like a hodgepodge of like some D&D shit with like Star Wars and westerns and Mad Max.
And Mad Max,
all
yeah.
into one.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. What a fucking treat of a robot post-apocalyptic family drama.
Oh, I do want to mention the scene where they are all trying to come up with names for the robots,
yes.
and it just keeps cutting away, and you think it's going to continue, but they come back, and it's like,
No
it's like
name
Blue
is
Bots
better.
is like, no.
Bobots? No name mentioned is better than the Smashy Smashy Eggman.
Oh man, yeah. What a delightfully weird movie. It really does. I think that's the best thing you can say about it is, like, you probably don't know where it's going. Like, if you even if you do know the twist of the robots, like, it still goes places that are just unexpected, and wild, and it looks great. Like, I think that's the other thing is, like, this movie is so incredibly crafted and put together. And I think even, like, over the course of this movie, you kind of see it change from, like, these very safe, like, camera angles. Like, the first half of that movie feels exactly like a story about guys going back to their hometown and shooting the shit over beers, and then just becomes this extremely stylized thing, which is just delightful in every way. But yeah, any other comments on The World's End? If we put it on a high enough pedestal. Man. Yeah, I mean, we could just do a podcast about Edgar Wright movies and just every week I would be like, it was fucking good. Yeah. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, then we'll go ahead and take a quick break and go into recommendations for other stuff we've been watching this week, or reading or playing or whatever the hell we're doing. But if you want to send us anything about The World's End or talk to us at all, you can reach out to us. Our email is rewatchersonthepod@gmail.com. You can also check us out on Instagram and Twitter at rewatcherspod. Enjoy this music and we'll be with you briefly. Welcome back to the recommendations section of Rewatchers on the Pod, the part of the podcast where we talk about other stuff that we're watching this week. Tyler, why don't you start us off this week?
I'll start us off.
You started us off last week. Why mess with something that isn't broken?
Yeah, perfection.
That's
even.
what they say.
So I haven't really watched. Well, I watched stuff for future episodes of this podcast. That's all I've watched.
Which we'll talk about on future episodes of this podcast, I'm sure.
But I have been playing Death Stranding. And if in case you didn't notice, it's a Hideo Kojima game.
Yes. The
his name's only plastered on it 600 times.
Hey, he's at least showing a little restraint since Metal Gear Solid 5, when it was literally every opening to every chapter or mission.
Yeah, I mean, okay, first off, one of the most unique games I've ever played. Mm-hmm. And I think that alone is worth the price of admission, because it's unique in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely has faults, but I think that overall you're not going to experience anything like it in any medium, really, to be honest, because that's how you have to experience this game.
Yeah.
Story-wise is very convoluted. I don't know if you... I was playing it when everyone got here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you were here yet when I said this, but like Justin was asking how far I am. I'm probably like 10 hours in, and I feel like we're still building first act stuff when we should be starting to, even though the like inciting incident and call to action have happened, I still feel like we're in the first act.
Yeah.
And it's just bizarre. A brief rundown as much as I can. There was an explosion.
Okay, I'm with you.
There was an explosion which made these things called BTs appear. It like killed half the world, maybe, or something. It definitely knocked out the Wi-Fi, and
it reset the router permanently.
This whole war between UPS, FedEx, DHL, they're all gone.
Arguably the most pressing matter we face in 2019, the shipping wars.
They might have just disbanded. It might have just been so much shambles they united under one umbrella of Bridges Corporation. And you play as a mailman who delivers packages.
Are we talking like Cliff Clavin-y? Okay, I think I just made the game a little bit better as if I could play Cliff Clavin.
Think a more white trash Karl Malone. But no, lots of Nick and Norman Reedus, lots of fetuses and tubes. I mean, if you're not sold on this already, lots of walking. Lots and lots of walking, and it's hard to walk. This is the game I've had the hardest time walking in, and that's the point of it.
Even over Resident Evil? Resident Evil 4?
Oh, gosh.
Oh, God.
No, he was so good at walking that he never ran.
That's right. Sorry. I'd forgotten about that.
For those in the know, I did beat Resident Evil 4, not knowing you could run in that game. So I walked the entire thing.
Lots of Monster Energy drinks?
Yes, Monster Energy drink makes a hard cameo.
Posters for Norman Reedus' show Ride on AMC Thursdays 8-9 Central.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know. I didn't say that one.
But yeah, it's just a super crazy, weird experience that's beautiful on, I think, multiple levels. I think visually it's beautiful. It's also some tonal things that happen are really interesting and beautiful. It definitely needs to go somewhere. Something needs to pick up at some point, either gameplay-wise or story-wise. But so far, I'm having a good time. If you're into weird shit, I'd recommend it. Some people I'd recommend maybe waiting until it's down to like $40. For those people who want to wait down till it's like $20, this game's not for you. You'll definitely not be happy. So yeah, really interesting. If you do want to know more about, and you're clueless, you do want to know about more Kojima's craziness in his games and his storytelling. Video Game Donkey just released a great video on YouTube covering the Metal Gear Solid franchise, which is a Hideo Kojima series.
Absolutely delightful.
And it I don't think there's anything false in that video. He goes over the whole story and it's just madness.
Yeah.
It's insane. You're like, what? So yeah, watch that too. That's my other recommendation.
Yeah, there were some people who were like comparing this to stuff like QWOP. Like in like obviously abstracted out.
Yeah.
But Tim Rogers on Kotaku actually had Bennett Foddy in his most recent video and had him play Death Stranding for an hour. So if you know who Bennett Foddy is, he's a weird, awesome game designer who makes stuff like QWOP and Getting Over It, where you play a man in a pot with a hammer that must climb a mountain. And he plays Death Stranding. It's a really great hour of your time for sure. Definitely worth it. Yeah, great. Brandon, what did you have for us?
I recommend Getting Over It by Bennett Foddy.
Let's do it. If you have a mouse you don't mind just fucking up.
I want to recommend the other movie I wanted to do and talk about.
Sweet.
Heavy Metal from, what was it, 1981?
Yes.
Early
The
80s?
animated movie?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
Oh my God! It is just this. The tagline is "sex, drugs, and rock and roll," and that doesn't even.
Netflix's newest original show.
No, but that alone doesn't do it justice. It's this crazy, like, acid trip of a time with what fucking John Candy is in it. He plays this robot that has sex with this woman. It's got, like, the soundtrack is insane too. It's got like Black Sabbath, Dio, Blue Oyster Cult, Journey, and it's weird, like, thinking that all of this stuff came together to make this movie. Yeah. And I love it every time I watch it. And it's got its fair share of camp, but like that's pretty big in most of the movies that I end up really loving.
Well, I think definitely a heavy element in any 80s sci-fi like stuff like that, especially that it wasn't attached to multi-million-dollar franchises at that point already. Like, you got some weird shit going on there. Oh, yeah. So, for fans of Death Stranding,
it's that type of animation that makes you just feel really uncomfortable looking at.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Now, I think Heavy Metal was like comics or was like something prior to that. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I feel like the artwork was like part of. I don't know. Anyways, yeah.
There was a sequel also.
Oh, Heavy Metal 2000, right?
Yeah, that exists. That's all I know about it.
Is a thing. God, the 80s were great. Good. Yeah, no, Heavy Metal is...
Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's been a couple years since I've seen it. More recently, I've seen the South Park episode where Kenny has a sexual awakening seeing Heavy Metal, which is... also heavily recommended by me. Not the episode having a sexual awakening while watching Heavy Metal. It's very much recommended. Justin, please get us out of this.
All right. So I have two things. The first being a YouTube channel that I discovered recently.
Oh, cool.
I sent you guys a video.
The music.
Text.
Yeah.
So
I watched it.
It's so good.
You'll have to tell me what you think about it. The guy, so this channel, his name is Tantacruel, I think is how you pronounce it. But he is a composer, I believe. I think that's what he does for work. He might actually teach at a university. Anyways, he does a lot of music stuff, and his YouTube videos are like long form kind of. He does like essay kind of stuff where he like reviews various things that are happening in music culture today. So like the one that I sent you guys was the title of the video is Star Wars Music is Getting Worse Beyond The Last Jedi and John Williams, a music philosophy review.
It's really interesting.
It's really great. Like it's not a shallow look into what makes Star Wars music bad. Like he actually really gets into some really cool stuff. I felt like the type of analysis that I haven't really been able to participate in since some of my classes that I took when I was in school. So highly recommend his channel. He's also got some other videos where he just like rips apart various computer software programs that you use to make music, and
Cool.
It's really fun. Some of them, like towards the end of them, he goes, it like gets really psychedelic and messed up, and it's a good time. You should check out his channel, Tantacruel.
Tantacruel. Tanti.
Tantacrul.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
good stuff.
Yeah, it's like just to second that, like it's really digestible. It's you don't need like a super thorough. If you have a basic understanding of music, and you want to participate in that conversation, his video, at least the one I've seen, is very well and really informative, really well structured, and understandable at a pretty easy level.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. The other thing, I discovered a new band this week.
These are my favorites.
I know. I was going to say, anytime that Justin recommends a band to me, I'm like,
this was on my Spotify Discover Weekly. This is like my favorite thing every single week. This Discover Weekly is fantastic. Group. It might be one guy. I need to look up exactly who this is. It's called Master Boot Record or Record. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But it's basically like 8-bit chiptune music, but like heavy metal, like blast beat drums and shredder guitar, and it's so great.
sounds amazing.
Yeah, so like the albums, let's see here. His album names are pretty great. Most recent being Internet Protocol. The one before that is C:// check disc. And then there's like,
Do not type that into your computer.
Rolls off the tongue.
direct memory access is another one. But yeah, I found this a couple days ago, and that was what I listened to all day at work. So
Awesome.
check it out.
What? Sorry, one more time.
Master Boot Record.
Master Boot Record. Okay, cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, I have a couple recommendations. While we're on music, the thing that I've not been able to stop listening to lately is Buckethead did a soundtrack for new Doom levels, which if you're not interested now, I don't know what else to say. It is just good shit. If you're into like metal,
I think that's actually how
Or
this
Satan?
showed up in my Discover Weekly.
Oh, is
because
it
I've been
because
listening to
Buckethead?
that
Yeah.
album, and so I think that's kind of how I got to this stuff.
If you're a fan of
The,
just face melting guitar for like a whole song.
yeah,
like,
just a 9-minute song titled "Romero, One Mind, Any Weapon." Sure, I'll listen to 9 minutes of whatever's happening. But yeah, that stuff's really great.
I know you were there. Did
Yeah.
you guys? Were you at the Ghost concert?
I think
I wanted
We-
to go so bad.
Wow, that was a fucking show.
We actually talked about that on this podcast.
did you?
Yeah,
There were like
you-
2 weeks in a row where we talked about ghosts.
Oh my God.
2 weeks in a row we talked about how
Yeah.
amazing Ghost is. But yeah, so the other thing, I went and saw Parasite this week, which is the new Bong Joon-ho movie. That is a Korean film that is probably showing at a major theater near you, which is already an insane thing to say. And I think I'm gonna make a bold statement. Probably not close enough to the end of the year, but Parasite is probably my favorite movie I've seen this year.
Damn.
It is a movie that is equal parts horrifying, beautiful, and hilarious in the darkest ways possible. It is basically this is a movie I absolutely encourage you to watch the trailer for, because it's not going to spoil much. It basically gives you the setup for the movie, which is that a young guy gets a job tutoring a very rich child. And it's a very class conscious movie. And I think that's why it is a movie that has been reviewing well basically anywhere that it's shown. And Bong Joon-ho was recently interviewed and asked kind of like, why do you think that is? And he's like, well, it's a movie about the dangers of capitalism and the emotional consequences of that it can bring with it. And it's an insane movie. I cannot recommend it enough. Definitely check it out.
Appreciate it's your favorite of his movies.
Yes. I would
remember,
say
what is the
that.
first one again?
I have only seen, so the only Bong Joon-ho movies I have seen are Snowpiercer and Okja before this, which is a Netflix movie.
Did you like Okja?
I liked it all right. I didn't love it. I think
I couldn't finish it.
Oh, really?
That was one of the movies that I haven't finished that was simply because I just wasn't digging it too much.
Yeah. It's weird. And I feel like it is a movie that takes a lot of big chances and swings for the fences a lot of the time, and sometimes it connects and sometimes it doesn't for me. But I do know the things I've heard about Bong Joon-ho's earlier movies, especially I think one of them is called Mother, sound very intriguing to me. And sound more along the lines of maybe what he did with Parasite. Parasite is definitely a very accessible movie, while also being wild in the best ways, as opposed to maybe something like The Lighthouse, which we've talked about, is definitely not it's a high entry level for that. But yeah, Parasite does some really incredible things. Definitely some of my favorite stuff this year. So, but yeah, check that out. But yeah, I think that's it for us. We will be back next week with another special guest. Emma Robinson is going to be joining us, and we're going to be watching the IFC miniseries, The Spoils of Babylon. Which, have you guys started watching Spoils of Babylon?
I have not started yet.
Do you know anything about Spoils of Babylon?
Tobey Maguire's in it.
Okay.
That's all I know.
Okay, I'm not going to...
And I watched Spider-Man 3 in preparation.
Yes. We'll be watching Spoils of Babylon and also Tobey Maguire, the canon. We'll be watching everything. Brothers, all the Spider-Man movies.
Seabiscuit.
Pleasantville, Seabiscuit.
The one with the one based on the book that everyone hates, but the movie, but loves the book. Gatsby, Great Gatsby.
That's the one.
Watching Gatsby.
Book that everyone hates, is that what you said?
No, the book that everyone loves, but hates the movie.
Oh,
but then I
okay,
realized that's
got it.
every movie based on a book.
Right.
Harry Potter. But yeah, so we'll be watching Spoils of Babylon. It's wild.
You've seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it, and I've been revisiting it in preparation. And I will say, just a little primer on Emma. When she decided that she wanted to watch Spoils of Babylon, it felt like absolutely 100% the exact thing that I would want to talk to Emma Robinson about. And so we're going to do that next week. It'll be a blast. But yeah, so watch that, and we will see you then. Signing off, this is me, Tyler Harris, with
Tyler McKinley.
Justin Hammer.
and our lovely guest.
It's a me, Brandon Bills.
And
the same
his
syllables.
famous catchphrase.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, it was a blast. Well, again, I'm sure. So thanks, Brandon. See you later, cuties.